Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney. It's Wednesday, October 28th, and I've got your top stories from WKYC.com and our WKYC app. Thanks for choosing to be here to get filled in on what is impacting you here in Northeast Ohio. Governor Mike DeWine held a press conference this afternoon, and while Congress has not come through with providing additional aid for Americans and for businesses, Governor Mike DeWine has a plan to hopefully get more money into the economy here in Ohio. What he would like to do is seek $5 billion in dividends to help the state's economy as we continue to deal with the pandemic. Now, this has to be approved by the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation. This would be the largest dividend ever paid by the Ohio BWC. Now, how this would work is this $5 billion would come from returns on investments from money that businesses have already paid to the Ohio BWC. Now, this comes after on Monday, the State Controlling Board approved Governor Mike DeWine's plan to use the U.S. CARES Act package money for more than $419 million to go to aid people here in Ohio. That money will go to businesses, higher education, and in some cases, directly to families to help with rent, mortgages, and certain utilities. We've got more information on that on WKYC.com, and of course, we'll be following to see if the Ohio BWC does in fact approve that record dividend here in Ohio to help out businesses that are struggling so much in the middle of this pandemic. Now, as we look toward tomorrow on Thursday, that's when we get the updated information on the public health advisory system from the governor during his regularly scheduled Thursday press conference. So we're taking a look at what would happen if we see counties go to that level 4 purple designation under that Ohio public advisory system. Now, as a reminder, 38 of our 88 counties right now are at the level red. That's the level 3. That's the second highest designation under the public health advisory system. And that's also almost 3/4 of the state's population. It's about 74% of Ohio's population. Now, there are 3 counties that are on the watch list to go to that level 4 purple level. That is Cuyahoga County right here in Cleveland, Clark County, and Hamilton County. Now, to reach level 4, a county has to hit at least 6 of the state's 7 COVID-19 spread indicators. A few of those include rising cases, rising hospitalizations, and rising deaths. And you have to hit those indicators within a county 2 weeks in a row. So to be put on a watch list means that a county did meet those indicators, at least 6 of them, but not necessarily for that second week in a row. So when we get that information tomorrow, it will be possible that those 3 counties, Cuyahoga County, Clark County, and Hamilton County, could have remained in those levels for those indicators and could become level 4 purple advisory. Now, as a reminder, level 4 denotes severe exposure and spread of COVID-19. There aren't any mandates as of right now that would be triggered at the state level for what could happen when a county reaches that level 4 purple public health advisory alert. However, the guidance from the Ohio Department of Health at that level is to stay home and only engage in necessary travel in a level 4 county. But that doesn't mean that there won't be orders and there won't be mandates that come forward as that level 4 designation is reached, if that happens tomorrow or at any point. And also, here's a reminder that many places where schools have been left to come up with their own plans, school districts for COVID-19, those might have their own triggering factors in there. So the school's plan might have something that says, perhaps, for example, that a school may have to be all virtual education if the county reaches that level 4. So we'll be expecting to hear from many different school systems, just one entity within the county that we'll be expecting to hear from if any counties do in fact reach that level 4 designation tomorrow. So as we're talking about that, let's take a look at the newest numbers in from the Ohio Department of Health. And overall across the state, cases are up from yesterday. The rate of positive tests is up. So that means that this increase in cases is not only due to an increase in testing, because the amount of positive tests coming back is up. Also, active hospitalizations are up across the state, and so are deaths from yesterday. In the last 24 hours, we've now seen 2,600 new cases daily reported of COVID-19. That's up from 2,509 reported yesterday, and that makes the 9th day in a row that there have been over 2,000 daily reported cases of COVID-19. That brings the total here in Ohio to over 205,000 cases that we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. The 7-day average rate for positive tests is 5.9%, and the latest daily rate for positive tests is 7%. Obviously, both of those above that World Health Organization recommended threshold of 5%. In the last 24 hours, we've seen 17 new reported deaths. That's actually down from yesterday when we saw 22 new reported deaths, but that total is now at 5,256 for the total deaths here in the state of Ohio related to COVID-19. We've seen 173 new hospitalizations in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of people right now who are hospitalized with COVID to 1,536. And of those 1,536 people, 416 of them are in the ICU. So that's about 27% of those people being treated right now are being treated in an intensive care unit, with 19 new ICU admissions in the last 24 hours. The hospital bed occupancy rate has stayed steady at 73% from yesterday, so 27% of hospital beds across the state available for people who need inpatient treatment at a medical facility. Now taking a look at the national and global COVID-19 numbers, the total number of national cases here in the U.S. is now very close to 9 million. It's at 8,812,318. The total number of deaths is now at 227,109. The U.S. still holding steady at 20% of the global cases and about 19.4% of the global deaths, despite having only 4% of the global population. Globally, the total number of cases is over 44 million now. It's at 44,229,969. That's an increase of over 4 million cases globally in a week and a half, very quickly approaching 50 million at the global level. The total number of deaths at the global level is now at 1,170,283. And just for your information, those national and global numbers come from Johns Hopkins University. Now, with the pandemic on the top of everyone's minds, more than 73 million Americans have already voted by mail or in person. Of course, experts are saying this is likely tied to the pandemic. People have been urged to vote early to avoid long lines, which we've seen the long lines with the early voting anyway, but in order to cut down on close contact on Election Day on November 3rd. Now, those 73 million Americans who have already voted by mail or early in person is half the total votes that were counted in the 2016 presidential election. So half of the people who voted in the 2016 presidential election have already voted. That's 48 million mail-in ballots and 24 million in-person early votes. According to a research poll from August, a majority of Americans definitely see the stakes as higher in this election. Compared to 20 years ago, about half of voters said it really mattered who won the election, the presidential election. Well, as of August, 83% of people who responded to this poll said that whoever the winner is will make a big difference. And anxiety is high for a lot of people surrounding this election. An APNORC poll this month said that 7 in 10 voters, so 70% of voters, said that they are anxious about the election. And that's no surprise. There's a lot at stake here. More than 226,000 people have died from COVID-19. We've seen a summer of protests and unrest as the nation grapples with racial injustice and sometimes violent confrontations around the country. Adding to that, gun sales have broken records, and President Donald Trump has called on his supporters to monitor voting sites and refuse to commit blanketly to a peaceful transfer of power, often calling the legitimacy of the way votes are being conducted into question. Now, law officials and election officials are preparing to carry out Election Day with the most civility that is possible. FBI and local officials in several states have been conducting drills. They've been setting up command centers to respond to election-related demonstrations that may take place. Also, election officials are training poll workers on how to de-escalate conflict and ensure that they are prepared and know about the rules for poll monitoring, voter intimidation, and harassment in order to cut down on any issues that people might experience if they do move forward with in-person voting on November 3rd. Now, an elections judge in Illinois, which is just outside, at a city just outside of Chicago in Naperville, said that these procedures have always been there, so we're not necessarily developing new procedures here, but they've just never had to be used. And the hope is that those techniques don't need to be used, but if necessary, people are trained and are there to support you to make sure you have the opportunity to have your voice heard on November 3rd if you do choose to vote in person on Election Day. In national news, the U.S. will not be replacing President Donald Trump in a defamation suit against the president. Now, here's what happened here. President Donald Trump tried to have the United States replace him as a defendant in a defamation lawsuit. This lawsuit is tied to columnist E. Jean Carroll alleging President Donald Trump, prior to his presidency in the mid to late 90s, raped her in a Manhattan department store in the 1990s. Now, Trump publicly called her a liar, so Carroll then sued him for defamation for calling her a liar. Now, the president wanted this case to become Carroll versus the United States rather than Carroll versus Donald Trump. The argument there was the Department of Justice argued that the U.S. should be the defendant because Trump had to respond to her lawsuit to prove that he was physically and mentally fit to be the president. But the judge in the case rejected that. The judge said that a law that protects federal employees from being sued for things that they do related to their work, for one, didn't apply to the president. And even if it did apply to the president, the judge ruled that President Donald Trump calling her a liar would have been outside the scope of what is required for him to do his job as the president. Now, lawyers for Carroll had wrote that only in a world gone mad could it somehow be presidential, not personal, for Donald Trump to slander a woman who they say, sexually assaulted. And the lawyers for Carroll did win that argument. The case will now continue as Carroll versus Donald Trump, not Carroll versus the United States. Bringing it back here to Cleveland, as we look to the weekend, on Sunday, the Cleveland Browns will take on the Raiders, and defensive end Myles Garrett is not practicing today. According to the Browns, this is because he has a recent ankle injury. Now, head coach Kevin Stefanski was very scant on the details about that today. He said the team is being very cautious as it prepares for the game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, in Sunday's game against the Bengals, Garrett had 2 sacks. He was a major force in the eventual win of that game, 37-34, and helping the Browns get to 5-2, their best start since 1994. So we are obviously wishing Myles Garrett a very speedy recovery. Hope to see him on the field on Sunday against the Raiders, but obviously his health is the most important thing there. Now, speaking of people who will not be on the field against the Raiders, wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is out. We know that. He tore his ACL in the first offensive play of the game against the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. And some people are floating a theory that the Cleveland Browns offense is better without Odell Beckham Jr. Well, the team is absolutely shutting that down. Quarterback Baker Mayfield said today that it's completely insensitive to a guy who just tore his ACL to be talking like that. And he said he's not even going to comment on it. You never want to lose guys, and that's where he's going to leave that one. Well, Jarvis Landry was more pointed in his rejection of that. He was on 92.3 The Fan's Bull and Fox show on Monday, and he said that that's not true at all. And he says he thinks a lot of the way the offense is set up is based on having OBJ on the field. And he says a lot of the things that have opened up for the team as an offense have been because of the threat that OBJ is. You know who else rejects that idea is head coach Kevin Stefanski. He simply said today, yes, I reject the idea that the offense is better without OBJ on the field. He said he would rather have number 13 on the field if available, but he's not. So they'll make sure they have a plan to move the ball any which way they can going into Sunday against the Raiders. And that will be Sunday here at home at First Energy Stadium in Cleveland. And the Raiders have a record of 3-3. I like the sounds of a 5-2 Browns team taking on a 3-3 Raiders team at home at First Energy Stadium on Sunday at 1 p.m. That is it for your 3 News Now afternoon update for Wednesday, October 28th. I'll see you next up on What's New at 5 p.m., which you can watch for free in the WKYC app. I'll have your trending stories in the Clicking in Cleveland segment there. If you're not already, please take a moment to subscribe to the 3 News Now with Stephanie Haney podcast. Yes, you can get this as a podcast on your favorite platform, literally everywhere: iHeart, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher. If you listen to podcasts on that platform, we are there. Just search for 3 News Now with Stephanie Haney. 3 News is one word, and it is the number 3. And if you would rate and review it, I would also really appreciate it. That just helps us get in contact with more people here in Northeast Ohio. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. It's a beautiful sunny day out there right now here in the Cleveland area. Hopefully it's nice where you are too. Stay safe and be well. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more 3 News Now. I'm Stephanie Haney.